Gia stood at the wide window of the Earth Embassy, watching the orange and purple sunset spread across the sky. Her slender fingers tightened around the silver pendant at her neck, the last gift from her mother before the attack. Though her face remained calm, anger burned inside her. 15 years had passed since human extremists had bombed the Solarian Cultural Center on her homeworld, killing her mother and 23 others. Now here she was, forced to smile and bow to the very species that had taken everything from her. This is temporary, she reminded herself, smoothing down the formal blue diplomatic robes that matched her father's. Ambassador Ta had insisted she join him on Earth as part of her training. 6 months, he had said. 6 months to learn how the enemy thinks. Though he used softer words in public, in private her father's bitterness matched her own. The sound of boots on marble made her tense. Solarians had superior hearing compared to humans, and she could tell by the rhythm that the approaching person was military trained. Ambassador Ta's daughter, I presume. She turned, her face a perfect mask of diplomatic neutrality despite her distaste. A human male in a formal military uniform stood before her. His dark hair was cut short in human military style, and his posture was rigid. I am Jiv Tai, she replied, deliberately not offering the customary human handshake. And you are? Captain Hyundai Sung. I've been assigned as your security detail during your stay on Earth. Jia's violet eyes narrowed slightly. I didn't request protection. Standard protocol for all diplomatic personnel, he replied with a small smile that never reached his eyes. They held the same haunted quality Jia recognized from her own reflection, especially given current tensions. The current tensions he referred to so casually were the result of border skirmishes between human and Solarian ships near the Rigel system. Her father had been sent to prevent a full-scale war, a war some on both sides seemed eager to start. I don't need a human shadow, she said coldly, turning back to the window. Instead of being offended, the captain simply nodded. I'll try to remain unobtrusive. The reception begins in an hour. I'll escort you down when you're ready. As he turned to leave, Jia caught a glimpse of something on his wrist, a medical alert band with Solarian script. Curious despite herself, she almost asked about it, but her pride stopped her. She wouldn't show interest in anything human. The reception hall teemed with diplomats from a dozen worlds, though humans dominated the gathering. Jia followed her father, nodding politely as introductions were made, while silently counting the minutes until she could return to her quarters. Captain Dae-sung kept a respectful distance, but she could feel his eyes watching her. Miss Ta, a human female approached with a glass of something blue. I'm Admiral Sion of Earth Fleet Command. Your father speaks highly of your research into cross-species communication. Jia bowed slightly. Thank you, Admiral. My work is still in its early stages. I'd be interested in hearing more. Perhaps we could. A sharp crack interrupted their conversation. Jia looked up to see the ornate ceiling beam above them split. Time seemed to slow as her Solarian brain processed information faster than those around her. The beam was falling directly toward a small human child who had wandered away from her parents. Without conscious thought, Jia's body reacted. Solarians possessed limited bioelectric manipulation, a trait her people rarely displayed in front of outsiders. But as the beam plummeted, Jia thrust out her hands, generating a blue-white energy field that slowed the beam's descent enough for her to push the child aside. The beam crashed to the floor, sending marble fragments flying. Silence fell over the reception hall as dust settled. The human child stared at Jia with wide eyes, unhurt but frightened. Around them, humans and aliens alike stared in shock. Jia realized her mistake immediately. Solarians kept their abilities private, considering them sacred. Her father would be furious. But as the child's mother rushed forward, sobbing with relief and gratitude, Jia couldn't bring herself to regret her action. Thank you, the woman whispered, clutching her daughter. Thank you. Security personnel flooded the room, examining the damage. Captain Dae-sung appeared at Jia's side. his expression unreadable. "Are you injured?" he asked quietly. "No," she replied, suddenly self-conscious about what he had witnessed. The security team announced that a structural weakness had caused the collapse, not sabotage as some had immediately feared. As the excitement died down, Gia felt the weight of stares. She had revealed something private about her species to a room full of potential enemies. As she made her way back to her father's side, Captain Daesung fell into step beside her. "Perhaps not all Solarians are as cold as they say," he murmured. Gia said nothing, but something small and unwelcome stirred in her chest. Not quite shame for her prejudice, not quite interest in this human who had seen her true nature, but something that disturbed her comfortable hatred nonetheless. Later that night, alone in her quarters, Gia studied her hands. The same hands that had saved a human child. Her mother's voice seemed to whisper from her memories. "Hatred is easy, daughter. Understanding is the true challenge." She pushed the thought away. One act of instinct didn't change 15 years of grief. One human child saved didn't balance her mother's life. And yet, as she drifted toward sleep, Captain Daesung's haunted eyes appeared in her mind. There was a story there, perhaps one not so different from her own. Gia touched her mother's pendant and whispered into the darkness, "I won't forget why I hate them." But for the first time in 15 years, the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. 6 months had passed since Gia arrived on Earth. Each morning, she marked another day on her calendar, counting down to when she could return to Xelar and leave humans behind forever. Yet as the days went by, her hatred had become routine rather than fiery. She maintained strict professionalism with Captain Daesung, who escorted her to diplomatic functions with quiet efficiency. "Good morning, Miss Tai," he would say, always with the same small nod. "Captain," she would reply, never using his name. Their conversations rarely went beyond security details and schedules. She noted, with reluctant approval, that he never tried to force friendship or asked personal questions. Unlike other humans who probed about Solarian customs or her family connections, Captain Daesung respected her silence. On the last day of spring, the embassy prepared for the Interstellar Cultural Festival, a week-long event showcasing art, music, and traditions from 27 different worlds. Ambassador Ta had assigned Gia to oversee the Solarian cultural exhibits. "Captain Daesung will assist you," her father informed her. "The security concerns are significant with so many visitors." Gia nodded, though she disliked the idea of spending more time with any human. Still, if she had to work with one, Daesung was tolerable. The festival's opening day brought thousands of visitors to the embassy grounds. Gia stood beside the Solarian crystal garden display, explaining its significance to curious humans. Daesung remained nearby, his eyes constantly scanning the crowds. During a quiet moment between tour groups, Gia found herself alone with the captain near the memorial fountain. "Your people created something beautiful here," Daesung said, watching the water shimmer with bioluminescent particles, a Solarian art form rarely shared with outsiders. "Beauty exists in all cultures," she replied stiffly, "even human ones." A slight smile touched his lips. "That's the most positive thing I've heard you say about humans." Gia didn't respond. The fountain's lights shifted, casting blue shadows across his face. She noticed for the first time a thin scar running along his jawline. "How did you get that?" she asked, surprising herself with the personal question. Daesung's hand moved reflexively to his jaw. "Proxima Centauri. The colony conflict 8 years ago." Gia stiffened. Proxima had been a bloody territorial dispute between humans and the Krell, a conflict where Xilarians had maintained neutrality while providing medical support to both sides. "You fought there?" "Yes." His eyes grew distant. "I lost my wife and daughter in the Proxima Centauri conflict. The Xilarian medical ship Taxu was the first responder. They couldn't save my family, but I watched your people work tirelessly to save hundreds of others." Gia felt suddenly uncomfortable. The practiced hatred she had maintained seemed hollow-faced with his loss, a mirror of her own. Before she could respond, a deafening boom shook the ground. Glass shattered as security alarms blared throughout the complex. "Get down," Dae-sung shouted, pulling her away from the windows as a second explosion rocked the embassy. His communication device crackled. "Security breach in sectors 3 and 7. All personnel initiate lockdown procedures." Dae-sung's training took over. He grabbed Jia's arm, guiding her through service corridors as smoke filled the main halls. They could hear shouting and the sound of weapon fire in distant parts of the building. "Who is attacking?" Jia asked, struggling to keep pace. "Unity Front, most likely," he replied grimly. "Human supremacist group opposed to alien cooperation." They reached a reinforced door at the end of a narrow hallway. Dae-sung pressed his palm to the scanner, then entered a code. The door slid open to reveal a small secure room, a panic room with basic survival supplies. "Inside," he ordered, checking the corridor behind them. "Quick." Once inside, the door sealed with a hydraulic hiss. Emergency lights bathed the room in dim blue. Dae-sung moved to the control panel. "The system is initiating full lockdown," he said, scanning the security readouts. 36 hours until override protocols activate." Jia stared at him. "We're trapped here for 36 hours. Until security forces clear the building and verify no threats remain." He checked the room's supplies. "We have water, emergency rations, and basic medical equipment." Jia sank into one of the 2 chairs. The room was barely 4 meters square, uncomfortably small for spending a day and a half with someone she had deliberately kept at a distance. The first few hours passed in awkward silence. Dae-sung monitored security channels while Jia meditated, a Silurian calming technique. Outside their secure room, they occasionally heard distant sounds of conflict. "Will your father be safe?" Dae-sung asked eventually. "He has his own security detail," Jia replied, "and a panic room in his quarters." Night fell. The room's lighting dimmed automatically. They shared emergency rations, bland but edible nutrition bars, and filtered water. "You should rest," Dae-sung suggested, offering her the room's single cot. "I'll take first watch." "I need less sleep than humans," Jia said. "Silurian physiology." "I know," he replied. 4 hours is sufficient for your species, preferably during the darkening cycle." Jia looked at him with surprise. "You know about Silurian sleep patterns?" His face showed a hint of embarrassment. "After Proxima, I studied your people, your language, customs, biology." "Why?" she asked. "To understand," he said simply. "It's easier to hate what you don't know." Before she could respond, he began to recite in perfect Silurian. "Though stars divide our worlds, the same light touches both our faces. Distance is an illusion. We breathe the same cosmic dust." Jia stared in shock. "That's Murray's Contemplation on Unity. How do you know this poem?" "Your literature is profound. It helped me after losing my family." In the small room's dim light, with no diplomatic pretenses between them, Jia saw Dae-sung clearly for the first time, not as a human, not as the enemy, but as someone who had suffered as she had. "My mother loved Murray's poetry," Jia said quietly. She would recite it while tending her garden. As the hours passed, their conversation flowed more naturally. Dae-sung spoke of his childhood in the Korean province of Earth, while Jia shared memories of Sailor's crystal forests. When she finally slept, the hatred that had defined her for 15 years felt slightly lighter, its foundation cracked ever so slightly by the unexpected connection formed in a secure room, 36 hours away from the world outside. The lockdown had changed everything between them. After those 36 hours trapped together, Jia could no longer pretend Captain Dae-sung was just another human to be tolerated. Their conversations had revealed a depth to him she hadn't expected, a respect for her culture, and a shared understanding of loss. In the months that followed, they developed a careful friendship that puzzled their colleagues. It began with small things. Dae-sung bringing her traditional Xilarian tea from the embassy's garden. Jia asking about his childhood on Earth. When her official duties required her to attend human cultural events, she found herself looking forward to his explanations of customs that had once seemed bizarre. Eventually, their meetings extended beyond professional requirements. They walked together through New Geneva's botanical gardens. They shared meals, discovering a mutual love of spicy foods despite their different biologies. When Jia mentioned missing Xilarian music, Dae-sung found rare recordings for her. "You don't have to do this," she told him. "I'd want to," he'd replied simply. The first time he touched her, just his hand brushing against hers as they watched Earth's moon rise, Jia felt a strange electric sensation that had nothing to do with her bioelectric abilities. They both pulled away quickly, surprised by the intensity of the connection. Their relationship evolved slowly, cautiously, both aware of the taboos they were breaking. Xilarians rarely formed romantic attachments with other species, considering it biologically pointless and culturally inappropriate. Humans, while more open to interspecies relationships, still viewed Xilarians with suspicion due to past conflicts. They kept their growing feelings secret, meeting in private spaces, away from judging eyes. Jia told herself it was temporary, an exploration, nothing more. She would return to Xilar eventually. This human chapter would close. But 6 months into their secret relationship, Jia began experiencing unusual symptoms. Dizziness in the mornings, strange food cravings, heightened sensitivity in her bioelectric field. When her body's natural luminescence began fluctuating unpredictably, she knew something was wrong. She visited Dr. Yun at the embassy's medical facility. The doctor was one of few physicians specialized in both human and Xilarian biology, making her the safest choice for discreet treatment. "Your symptoms are puzzling," Dr. Yun said, reviewing the scan results. "Almost like." Her voice trailed off as she stared at the screen. "This can't be right." She ran the scan again, her movements becoming increasingly agitated. Finally, she turned to Jia with wide eyes. "Are you involved with a human, Miss Ta?" Jia's silence was answer enough. Dr. Yun shook her head in disbelief. "Impossible," said Dr. Yun, the human Xilarian specialist. "Your species' DNA structures are fundamentally incompatible." Yet the evidence was irrefutable. 6 months after her relationship with Dae-sung had evolved into something forbidden by both their cultures, Jia was pregnant. "The child appears viable," continued Dr. Yun with professional fascination, barely masking her excitement. "This defies everything we know about xenogenetics." Jia pressed her hand against her abdomen, torn between her lifetime vow and the impossible life growing within her. According to every xenobiology textbook, every medical expert, every cultural assumption, this simply couldn't happen. Humans and Xilarians could not reproduce together. Their genetic structures were too different, like trying to combine water and oil. "How?" she whispered. "I don't know," Dr. Yun admitted. "Perhaps it's your bioelectric field somehow stabilizing the genetic combination. Perhaps it's something in Captain Dae-sung's genetic makeup. This will revolutionize our understanding of interspecies compatibility." "You can't tell anyone," Jia said quickly. Dr. Yun's excitement dimmed. "You'll need specialized care. This pregnancy has no precedent. The risks. No one can know. Not yet." That night, Jia asked Dae-sung to meet her in their usual place, a quiet corner of the embassy gardens where security cameras had a convenient blind spot. When he arrived, his smile faded at the sight of her troubled expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, taking her hands. The words caught in her throat. How could she tell him something that should be biologically impossible? Something that would forever change both their lives. "I'm pregnant," she finally said, "with your child." Dae-sung stared at her, confusion crossing his face. "But that's not. We can't." It happened anyway. He stood perfectly still, processing her words. Then, slowly, he sank to his knees before her, his hand still holding hers. "I will protect you both," he whispered, "regardless of what comes." The intensity in his eyes both frightened and comforted her. They stayed in the garden until sunrise, making plans, weighing options. They would need to tell her father. Ambassador Tai could not be kept in the dark about something that could affect diplomatic relations if discovered. The next morning, Gia requested a private meeting with her father. In his 7 years as ambassador, he had grown accustomed to human ways while maintaining Solarian dignity. She hoped this adaptability would extend to her situation. She was wrong. "Impossible," he said when she told him, using the same word Dr. Yun had started with. But where the doctor's tone had been scientific, her father's was cold with anger. "It's the truth," Jia replied. Dr. Yun confirmed it. Ambassador Tai paced his office, the traditional Solarian calm completely absent. "You've been intimate with a human, while serving as a diplomat. Have you lost your mind?" "I love him," Jia said, the words strange but true on her tongue. Her father stopped pacing. "You dishonor your mother's memory," he hissed. "This abomination is your grandchild," Jia interrupted, surprised by her own fierce protectiveness. The life inside her, impossible as it was, had awakened something primal in her nature. Ambassador Tai stared at his daughter, as if seeing a stranger. "This will ruin you, both our families, the diplomatic relations we've worked to build. Or it could be a symbol of true unity," she suggested, though without much hope. Her father turned away. "I need time to think. Tell no one else about this." No one. But someone had already heard. That night, Gio received an anonymous message. "The impossible child will change everything. The galaxy deserves to know." By morning, their private miracle had become a galactic scandal. News outlets across Earth blared the headline: "Human Xelarian hybrid, first in history." Security personnel surrounded Joe's quarters as reporters gathered outside the embassy. Her communication device overflowed with messages, some supportive, many hateful. When Dae-sung fought his way through the chaos to reach her, his military uniform torn and his face bruised from an encounter with protesters, Gio realized their life would never be simple again. The child growing inside her, the biological impossibility, had just become the most important being in the galaxy. "Human Xelarian hybrid. Riot, miracle or monstrosity," screamed the headlines across Galactic Reddit. Jia scrolled through the comments on her tablet, each word making her heart sink further. "Unnatural abomination. Proof that species barriers are just social constructs. The child should be studied for medical advancements. This threatens the purity of both bloodlines." She turned off the device, her hand moving instinctively to her growing belly. 3 months had passed since the news had leaked. The embassy no longer felt safe, with protesters gathering daily outside its walls. Some carried signs supporting the miracle child, while others demanded the pregnancy be terminated. Both sides frightened her with their intensity. Ambassador Tai had been recalled to Xelar for consultations, leaving Jia behind. His last words to her had been formal and cold. "The High Council will decide how to address this situation." The situation. Not his grandchild. Not his daughter's well-being. Dae-sung entered her quarters, carrying a tray of food specially prepared to meet her changing dietary needs. His once pristine military uniform had been replaced by civilian clothes as he'd been suspended from duty. A temporary reassignment, they called it, though everyone knew he'd likely never serve in security again. "You need to eat," he said gently, setting the tray beside her. "I'm not hungry. The doctor said your caloric needs have doubled. The baby draws energy from your bioelectric field." Gia sighed and took a piece of the modified fruit. Even simple things like eating had become complicated. Her Xelarian body wasn't designed to support a hybrid life, and the pregnancy was taking its toll. The natural blue glow beneath her skin had dimmed, and she tired easily. Dae-sung sat beside her, dark circles under his eyes revealing his own exhaustion. He rarely left her side now, especially since the death threats had started arriving. Some from human purists, others from Silurian traditionalists. "There was another security breach attempt last night," he said quietly. "Someone tried to access this floor." "Who?" "Unknown. Could be curious staff. Could be someone with worse intentions." He took her hand. "We can't stay here, Ja. It's not safe for either of you." She looked around at the quarters that had been her home for over a year. "Where would we go? Your government watches you. My people have rejected me. We need to leave Earth," he told her. "I have contacts on Europa. There's a research facility there, neutral ground." "A research facility." Alarm colored her voice. "I won't let our child become a laboratory specimen." "It's not like that. It's a medical center with top xenobiologists. They can help where Dr. Young can't." He squeezed her hand. "Trust me, Ja. I wouldn't suggest it if I didn't believe it was our best option." 3 days later, they slipped away from the embassy during a shift change. Dae-sung had arranged transport on a commercial vessel, their identities hidden under fake documentation. The journey to Jupiter's moon took 4 days. 4 days of hiding in their small cabin, hoping no one recognized the Silurian woman whose image had been broadcast across the galaxy. Europa's surface was covered in ice, but humans had built vast underground complexes, taking advantage of the subsurface ocean. The research facility was located in the northern hemisphere, its entrance a simple airlock in the icy landscape. As they disembarked from the transport, Jia felt the reduced gravity immediately easing some of her physical discomfort. Dae-sung supported her as they walked toward the airlock, where a single figure waited for them. The man looked remarkably like Dae-sung, the same strong jawline and broad shoulders, but his hair was longer, and he wore a scientist's uniform rather than military dress. "Brother," the man said simply. Dae-sung nodded stiffly. "Ki." Jia looked between them, suddenly understanding. What Dae-sung hadn't mentioned was that his estranged brother, Dr. Ki, was the facility's director. The tension between them was palpable as Ki led them inside. "We've prepared quarters for you," Ki said, leading them through sterile white corridors. "And a medical suite for examinations. When were you going to tell me your brother runs this place?" Jia whispered to Dae-sung. "Would you have come if I had?" She didn't answer. The brothers' relationship was clearly complicated, and Dae-sung had warned her that they hadn't spoken in years. Now she understood why he'd been reluctant to explain his contacts on Europa. Their quarters were small but private. A bedroom, living area, and personal hygiene facility. As soon as they settled in, Ki requested that Jia visit the medical suite for examination. "Your condition is unprecedented," Ki explained as he guided her to a scanning table. "We need baseline readings to ensure proper care." The medical suite was more advanced than the embassy's facilities. Jia lay still as machines hummed around her, scanning every cellular layer of her changing body. When they finished, Ki displayed the results on a large screen. When the brothers studied the images side by side, the resemblance between them was striking, though Ki's eyes held scientific curiosity, where Dae-sung's showed concern. "Fascinating," Ki murmured, reviewing Jia's scans. "The fetus has developed a completely novel genetic structure. Neither human nor Xilarian, but something evolutionary. Will they survive?" Dae-sung demanded, his voice tight with fear. Ki hesitated. "I don't know, but if they do, your child might represent the next step in interspecies evolution." Jia watched the brothers, one fearful for love, one curious for science, and wondered what future her child could possibly have in such a divided galaxy. "The bioelectric field surrounding the fetus is unique," Ki continued, pointing to a glowing area on the scan. "It appears to be creating a stabilizing matrix for the combined DNA." "In simple terms, Doctor," Jia said, sitting up slowly, "will my child be healthy?" Kai looked uncomfortable. "There are challenges. Your body is struggling to provide proper nutrients. The child's development doesn't follow either human or Xilarian patterns. But you can help." Dae-sung pressed. "We can try," Ki replied. "I've assembled a team of specialists," discreetly. "They've signed confidentiality agreements." That night, alone in their quarters, Jia wept for the first time since learning of her pregnancy. Dae-sung held her, his own fears unspoken but visible in his eyes. "I never wanted any of this," she whispered. "I came to Earth hating humans. Now I'm carrying a child that's half human, hiding on a moon, treated like a scientific curiosity." "Do you regret it?" Dae-sung asked quietly. Jia placed his hand on her belly, where a faint blue glow pulsed beneath her skin, the child's developing bioelectric field responding to its father's touch. "No," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Whatever happens, I don't regret loving you." Outside their small sanctuary, the controversy raged. Religious groups proclaimed the child as divine proof of universal compatibility. Scientists debated the implications for evolution theory. Politicians argued over the diplomatic consequences. But within the medical facility on Europa, time moved differently. Each day brought new discoveries about the developing life within Jia, a life that refused to follow any known pattern, forging its own unique path between two worlds that had never before been bridged. The final weeks of Jia's pregnancy tested the limits of both Solarian and human medical knowledge. Her body weakened as the child grew stronger, drawing energy from her bioelectric field in ways no one fully understood. Dr. Ki and his team worked around the clock, developing specialized nutrients to support both mother and child. "Her systems are shutting down," Ki told his brother one night, when Jia was finally sleeping. "The child's hybrid nature is demanding more than her body can provide." Dae-sung's face hardened. "Save them both." "We're trying. But you need to prepare yourself for difficult choices." But the child had plans of her own. On the 267th day, halfway between the human and Solarian gestation periods, Europa experienced a rare atmospheric phenomenon. Solar radiation interacted with the moon's thin atmosphere, creating rippling curtains of light similar to Earth's aurora borealis. Jia woke to intense pain and a strange pulling sensation in her bioelectric field. The monitors around her bed sounded alarms as her vital signs fluctuated wildly. "Something's wrong," she gasped as Dae-sung rushed to her side. Dr. Ki and his team hurried into the room. "The child is initiating birth," he announced, checking the readings, "and somehow drawing energy from Europa's electromagnetic field." The delivery room was prepared quickly. Through the transparent dome ceiling, the auroral lights danced as Jia struggled to bring forth a life that should never have existed. "The baby's bioelectric field is synchronizing with the auroral storm," one scientist noted with amazement. "It's using the external energy to stabilize itself." After 9 hours of labor, as the storm reached its peak intensity, the impossible child entered the universe. The child was born during an auroral storm on Europa. Tiny fists glowing with bioluminescence, a Solarian trait, while her cries resonated with unmistakably human emotion. "She's perfect," Dae-sung whispered, tears streaming down his face as he held their daughter for the first time. The infant's skin had the faintest blue undertone of Solarian's, but her eyes were deep brown like her father's. Most remarkable was the soft glow that pulsed beneath her skin, not the steady luminescence of pure Solarians, but a rhythmic pattern that seemed to match her heartbeat. The medical team crowded around, their scientific curiosity momentarily overcoming professional distance. "Physically stable," Ki announced after examining the child. "Hybrid characteristics throughout, but harmoniously integrated. It's as if her DNA created an entirely new pattern, rather than a patchwork of both species." As Jia held her daughter, exhausted but radiating joy, she and Dae-sung exchanged looks. "Hannah," they said together. The word meant one in both their languages, one of the few linguistic coincidences between their worlds. They named her Hannah, meaning one in both their languages. The first days of Hannah's life were filled with tests and examinations, but also moments of quiet wonder. She nursed successfully, despite concerns about nutritional compatibility. Her bioelectric field stabilized without the external stimulus of the auroral storm. She responded to both human and Silurian lullabies. She represents something entirely new, he told them. Not just genetically, but philosophically. She proves our species aren't as separate as we believed. On the third day after Hannah's birth, their peaceful bubble burst. A transport arrived from Earth carrying an unexpected visitor, Ambassador Ta. Jia was feeding Hannah when her father entered their quarters. She tensed, instinctively cradling the baby closer. "Father," she acknowledged coolly. Ambassador Ta stood rigidly in his formal diplomatic attire. His eyes moved from his daughter to the infant in her arms. "The Silurian Council sent me to assess the situation," he said formally. Dae-sung moved to stand protectively near his family. "And what will you tell them?" 3 days later, Ambassador Tai arrived. Jia prepared for confrontation, but her father moved past her to the infant's cradle. He studied his granddaughter in silence before pressing his forehead to hers in the traditional Silurian blessing. The gesture, reserved for accepting a new family member, brought tears to Jia's eyes. "Your mother would have been proud of your courage," he said quietly to Jia. Later, as Hannah slept, Ambassador Ta explained the political situation. "Both our worlds are divided on this matter. Some see your child as a threat to species purity. Others view her as an evolutionary miracle." "And what do you see?" Dae-sung asked. The older Silurian's formal demeanor softened slightly. "I see my granddaughter, and a future I never imagined possible." He revealed that his initial anger had given way to reflection during his time back on Xelar. "I realized I was clinging to old hatred, the same hatred that took your mother from us. She wouldn't have wanted that to be her legacy." News of Hannah's birth spread throughout the settled worlds. Images, carefully controlled by Dr. Key to protect the family, showed the healthy hybrid child. She became known as the Bridge, living proof that the perceived boundaries between species were more permeable than anyone had believed. Scientific papers were published about the medical breakthroughs her existence represented. Religious leaders debated the spiritual implications. Politicians struggled to create new legal frameworks for hybrid citizens. But for Jia and Dae-sung, the political and scientific significance of their daughter was secondary to their love for her. As Hannah grew stronger, they began planning for a future away from laboratories and public scrutiny. "She deserves a normal childhood," Jia insisted, "not life as a specimen or symbol." With Ambassador Tae's help, they identified a frontier colony in the Ta City system, far enough from both Earth and Xelar to offer anonymity, but with a diverse population where a mixed species family wouldn't stand out. 6 months later, Jia and Dae-sung established a home on the frontier colony, away from scrutiny. Their modest dwelling sat at the edge of the settlement, with open fields where Hannah could play freely as she grew. Dae-sung found work in the colony's security force, while Jia used her diplomatic training to help mediate between the colony's diverse species. They lived simply, treasuring the privacy it fought so hard to achieve. Yet they weren't entirely alone. Other cross-species couples emerged from secrecy, inspired by their story. Some even relocated to the same colony, forming a small community of families that didn't fit traditional categories. As the months passed, Hannah developed at her own unique pace. She walked earlier than human children, but later than Silurian ones. Her bioelectric abilities emerged gradually, smaller in magnitude than pure Xelarians, but more precisely controlled. She spoke her first words in a mix of both languages. One evening, as Jia prepared dinner, she watched through the window as Dae-sung taught Hannah to walk across the garden. The child's tiny feet left glowing blue footprints on the ground that faded slowly, a charming side effect of her hybrid biology. As Jia watched Dae-sung teaching Hannah to walk, her luminescent footprints marking each wobbling step, she finally released the vow that had defined her life. The hatred she had nursed for humans had been a prison. Love, unexpected and impossible, had become her freedom. She thought of her mother, wondering what she would have made of this strange, beautiful family. Perhaps she would have been afraid at first, as Gia had been. But seeing Hannah's joy as she toddled into her father's arms, how could anyone maintain the walls of hatred and fear? Occasionally, news reached them of ongoing debates their story had sparked. Xenobiologists studied the data from Hannah's birth to better understand interspecies compatibility. Legal scholars cited their case in arguments for expanded rights. On Galactic Reddit, their story continued to trend. But Gia no longer read the comments. She had a more important story to live. That night, as Hannah slept between them, her small body giving off a gentle blue glow, Dae-sung looked at Gia with wonder. "Did you ever imagine this?" he asked. "When you first came to Earth?" Gia shook her head, remembering the angry young woman who had arrived on Earth, determined to hate everything about it. "I came looking for reasons to maintain the distance between our worlds," she said softly. "Instead, I found the bridge." Outside their window, the stars of their new home system shone over a world where their daughter could grow up free from the burden of ancient hatreds, a child of two worlds who belonged fully to both and to something entirely new.